There is a reason the brightest souls attract the darkest minds. It is not coincidence. It is not bad luck. It is energy. It is law. Because in every era, the light has drawn the shadow, not because the shadow loves it, but because it needs it to survive. Carl Jung wrote, "The brighter the light, the darker the shadow." He wasn't speaking about good and evil in the religious sense. He was describing human nature, the psychic magnetism between creation and consumption, between wholeness and hunger. And this is why narcissists target empaths who shine the brightest, because the narcissist is a void masquerading as form, and the empath is life itself. The empath radiates authenticity, unfiltered emotion, warmth, intuition. They walk through the world with an open heart, guided not by calculation but by connection. They see the soul before they see the mask. They love beyond reason. They feel beyond words. And that rawness, that purity, that absence of armor terrifies and entices the narcissist. You see, the narcissist lives on borrowed energy. They are a counterfeit sun. They cannot create light. They can only reflect what they steal. Behind the charm, behind the intellect, behind the rehearsed confidence, there is emptiness, a hollowness so vast that it echoes. They survive by feeding on others' reflection of them. And when they find an empath, someone who sees the potential, the beauty, the goodness buried even in the broken, it's like discovering an endless supply of oxygen. The empath becomes their mirror, their muse, their lifeline. And the narcissist, at first, plays the perfect role. They study your energy the way a thief studies the layout of a vault. They mimic your values, your tone, your rhythm. They give you intensity disguised as intimacy. They make you believe you've met someone who finally gets you. But that's the illusion. It's not love they're giving, it's reflection. They're mirroring your essence back to you, showing you the parts of yourself you long to see, the depth you feared no one would ever recognize. And when you fall for them, you are not falling for them, you are falling for your own reflection in their performance. Jung said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The narcissist, then, is the mirror of your unconscious empathy, the part of you that loves without discernment, that confuses compassion with surrender. They appear not just to wound you, but to awaken you. At first, it feels intoxicating. The connection is electric, cinematic. You feel seen, valued, worshipped. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, the energy shifts. The warmth becomes control. The curiosity becomes criticism. The connection becomes captivity. They start feeding on your need to be good. They weaponize your kindness against you. And before you realize it, your light has been dimmed under the weight of their shadow. This is the narcissistic paradox. They envy the very light they depend on. They are drawn to it because it represents what they lost: authenticity, empathy, love. Yet they destroy it because it reminds them of what they cannot sustain. They need to conquer what they admire, to diminish what they crave. It's not personal, it's pathology. But to the empath, it feels deeply personal. Because the empath feels everything, the joy, the pain, the confusion, all magnified through the lens of their sensitivity. They don't just love the narcissist, they understand them. They see the wounded child behind the arrogance, the insecurity behind the manipulation, and in that understanding they become trapped, because they confuse understanding with healing and compassion with permission. The narcissist's greatest weapon is the empath's unwillingness to believe in cruelty. They count on your hope. They count on your forgiveness. They count on your fear of being too harsh. They know that your empathy will make you question yourself before you ever question them. You'll wonder if you're overreacting, if you misunderstood, if maybe you're the problem. You'll apologize for things you didn't do just to restore peace. You'll start dimming your light to make them comfortable, speaking softer, dreaming smaller, shrinking quieter, because they've trained you to equate your own voice with conflict. This is how empaths lose themselves, not through violence, but through erosion, the slow, invisible decay of self-trust, the steady disconnection from intuition, the quiet surrender of boundaries in the name of love. And the more you give, the emptier you become, because you are pouring light into a vessel that has no bottom. No matter how much you love them, it will never be enough, not because your love is insufficient, but because their void is infinite. Jung wrote that the one who looks outside dreams, the one who looks inside awakens. And for the empath, awakening begins the moment they stop trying to rescue and start trying to see the pattern, not the performance, to see the manipulation, not the mask, to see that your empathy is sacred and sacred things are not meant to be squandered. When the empath finally wakes, the narcissist's power collapses, because the narcissist does not fear confrontation. They fear indifference. They thrive on reaction, whether it's love, anger, or confusion. It feeds them. But silence, detachment, boundaries, that is their death sentence. When the empath reclaims their no, the dynamic dies, because the narcissist cannot exist without a mirror. Take away the reflection, and they are left with nothing but their own void. And the empath, who once drowned in their emotional chaos, finally breathes again. But this awakening is not gentle. It is brutal. It is the psychic equivalent of tearing your energy back from someone who's been feeding on it for years. It hurts. It burns. It leaves scars. But those scars are sacred. They are symbols of rebirth. This is the point where the empath transforms. No longer naive, no longer open to anyone who smiles, no longer mistaking intensity for intimacy. They begin to guard their energy the way a queen guards her crown, not from bitterness, but from wisdom, because now they understand. Not everyone who craves your light deserves your warmth. Some are drawn to you not because they love your glow, but because they hope to control it. Some are attracted to your empathy not because they cherish it, but because they know how to weaponize it. Some are impressed by your authenticity only because they've forgotten what it feels like to have one. The awakened empath no longer explains. They observe. They no longer chase. They calibrate. They no longer try to prove their goodness. They embody it quietly. You see, the narcissist never truly loved the empath. They loved the way they felt in their presence. They loved the reflection of worth that the empath provided. They loved the illusion that someone so radiant could believe in their fiction. But love built on illusion cannot last. And when the mirror shatters, the narcissist retreats to find another. For the empath, however, the ending is not an ending. It is evolution. It is the soul remembering that compassion without boundaries is not holiness, it is self-erasure. It is the moment empathy turns into discernment. The moment the healer becomes sovereign. When you rise from that kind of betrayal, you do not return to who you were. You emerge stronger, clearer, wiser. Your light becomes refined, no longer soft and diffused, but sharp, focused, directional. You stop shining for everyone. You shine with purpose. Your energy becomes language. Your presence becomes truth. And that is what terrifies the narcissist most. Not your anger, but your evolution. Because the empath who learns boundaries becomes the one thing a narcissist cannot control. A mirror that reflects nothing but clarity. You no longer play their game. You no longer dance to their tune. You've remembered that your light was never theirs to borrow. It was yours to protect. And now, that light burns cleaner, brighter, unstoppable. The world will still test you. The shadows will still approach. But you will no longer mistake darkness for depth. You will no longer confuse attention for affection. You will no longer abandon yourself in the name of understanding someone else. Because now you know your empathy is not for sale. Your energy is not public property. Your soul is not a mirror for the lost. It is a lighthouse for the ready. And in that realization, you have become something the narcissist will never be: whole, complete, unshakably alive. You are the empath who saw through illusion and found power. The light that learned how to shine without bleeding. The mirror that no longer reflects others, but reveals truth itself. And that terrifying, magnificent transformation is why narcissists target empaths who shine the brightest, because deep down even they know you are everything they pretend to be. And once you've seen it, once you've stared straight into the hollow eyes of a soul that only knows how to take you, can never go back to innocence. You will never again confuse flattery for affection, or intensity for intimacy, or chaos for passion. The spell breaks, the mirror shatters, the illusion burns away. At first, it's painful, unbearably so, because to the empath, love was never a game. It was oxygen. You gave without calculation. You believed without proof. You forgave because that's what love meant to you. And when that love is met with manipulation, the betrayal cuts deeper than words can describe. But even in that heartbreak lies the seed of transformation. Because what the narcissist doesn't understand is this: when they break an empath, they forge an alchemist. That pain becomes fire, and that fire purifies. It burns away the illusions that kept you blind, the belief that goodness alone can change someone, the fantasy that love will heal what refuses to see itself. It scorches the weakness that once made you beg to be understood. And what remains raw, defiant, luminous is truth. This is when the empath begins to awaken into their higher nature, no longer the rescuer, no longer the sponge, no longer the open wound that bleeds light for everyone else's comfort. They rise slow and deliberate from the ashes of their own forgiveness. Their eyes, once filled with innocence, now carry the weight of wisdom. Their heart, once naive, beats with sacred discernment. They have learned that empathy without consciousness is a doorway to hell, and that love without respect is self-harm disguised as virtue. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." N4. That's what the narcissist unknowingly gives the empath: initiation through darkness. The empath descends into shadow, learns its language, feels its teeth, and then they bring that knowledge back to the surface, not as fear, but as power. Because once you've seen manipulation from the inside, you can smell it before it speaks. Once you've witnessed gaslighting up close, you no longer doubt your intuition. Once you've experienced what it means to love someone who feeds on empathy, you no longer confuse sympathy with self-sacrifice. The empath becomes an oracle, their perception sharper, their awareness cleaner, their energy guarded by invisible armor. They no longer need to raise their voice or prove their worth. Their vibration speaks louder than words. They see the world as it is, not as they wish it to be. They understand that the light was never meant to fight the darkness, only to reveal it. And when you reach that level of awareness, something profound happens. The narcissist's spell loses all power. Their charm feels synthetic. Their flattery falls flat. Their manipulation no longer finds a hook in your consciousness. You begin to see through people like glass, not with judgment, but with knowing. That knowing becomes your strength. You no longer absorb people's pain, you observe it. You no longer carry their projections, you deflect them. You no longer chase closure, you are closure. The empath who has awakened doesn't hate the narcissist. They don't need revenge, and they don't crave an apology. Because true power doesn't seek validation, it simply is. Forgiveness becomes effortless, not because they condone the behavior, but because they understand its root. They see that narcissism is not power, it is hunger. It is a soul starving for self that tries to eat others to fill the void. And the empath knows now you cannot heal hunger that refuses to eat truth. You cannot love someone into consciousness. You cannot pour light into a cup that insists on staying broken. So instead of trying to save them, you release them not in bitterness, but in grace. You let them live in their illusion while you return to your evolution. You let them seek mirrors while you seek mastery. Because the lesson has been learned. Energy is sacred. And the world does not reward those who waste it. The empath begins to build differently now. They build with boundaries, with silence, with intention. They surround themselves with those who give as deeply as they receive. They walk away from anything that requires the abandonment of their soul. They stop explaining, stop negotiating, stop proving. And in that stillness, they discover something profound peace. Not the peace that comes from retreat, but the peace that comes from authority. It's not about avoiding the world. It's about mastering the self within it. You see, narcissists can only feed on those who need to be seen. Once you stop seeking validation outside yourself, you become untouchable. They can't seduce you with flattery because you no longer crave approval. They can't manipulate your guilt because you've made peace with your imperfection. They can't control your empathy because it's no longer reactive, it's chosen. This is what Jung meant by individuation, becoming a whole person. You integrity your shadow. You own your power. You no longer live as reflection. You live as reality. The empath, once the world's emotional servant, becomes its teacher not through words, but through energy. Their very presence now carries a vibration of truth that the unhealed find unbearable. Their silence becomes a sermon. Their boundaries become medicine. Their energy, once chaotic from overgiving, now hums with stability. When they walk into a room, people feel it. The manipulative grow uncomfortable. The authentic feels safe because truth has gravity and the empath has become its embodiment. And so the cycle ends. No more rescuing, no more explaining, no more trying to convince people to see your worth. Because the empath has realized that the right people never need convincing. They recognize light when they see it because they carry their own. From this point onward, you attract differently. You love differently. You live differently. You no longer chase intensity. You crave peace. You no longer seek validation. You seek resonance. You no longer fear solitude. You honor it as sacred ground. The narcissist will still exist, as shadows always do, circling the light, but you will see them for what they are: lost. Fragments of the collective unconscious, feeding off reflection because they fear the void inside. And in that understanding, you are free. You can love them from afar without losing yourself. You can forgive them without letting them back in. You can wish them healing while guarding your peace. Because you have learned that love without boundaries is not divine, it is delusion. And empathy without awareness is not compassion, it is control in disguise. The empath who shines the brightest does not need to dim their light. They only need to stop shining it on those who refuse to see. Because light does not beg the darkness to change. It simply exists. And in its existence, truth is revealed. So if you've ever wondered why narcissists were drawn to you, understand this. It's because they saw something in you they could never replicate: authenticity. They were drawn to your depth, your kindness, your radiance, not to cherish it, but to consume it. And that's how you know who you are, because even the empty seek your fullness, but they can no longer touch you now. Your light has evolved from glow to flame, and flame does not beg to be loved. It demands to be respected. It burns away everything that cannot match its frequency. It illuminates without apology. It warms without weakening. You are no longer prey for the broken. You are no longer a mirror for the lost. You are no longer a source for those who refuse to generate their own light. You are the embodiment of what Jung, Nietzsche, and every mystic before them tried to describe: a soul that has seen its own darkness and chosen to remain radiant. A consciousness that no longer fears the shadow because it has learned to wield it. A light that no longer flickers in the wind because it has become the fire itself. And from that fire, you do not seek revenge. You do not seek validation. You simply walk luminous, sovereign, unbothered, Because when an empath awakens, the narcissist loses their food. And when the narcissist loses their food, the illusion collapses. And when the illusion collapses, the empath is reborn, not as who they were before, but as what they were always meant to be: a healer, a creator, a mirror of truth, too powerful to be used, too aware to be deceived, too alive to be dimmed. That is the real reason narcissists target empaths who shine the brightest. Because deep down they know your light exposes what they fear most: the emptiness within themselves. And no matter how hard they try to consume it, the truth remains. Your light was never theirs to take. It was only ever yours to remember. And so, in the quiet aftermath of everything you've endured, after the storm, after the manipulation, after the breaking and the awakening, you finally arrive in a space the narcissist will never reach: stillness. Not a numb stillness of repression, but the living stillness of awareness. You stand there, surrounded by the ruins of old versions of yourself, the one who overgave, the one who explained, the one who mistook love for labor, and you realize that those ruins were never a grave. They were a cocoon. Because the empath who survives the narcissist is not the same soul who met them. They are forged, refined, everything naive in them burned away, until all that remains is truth. Not soft truth, not poetic truth, but the kind that rattles the bones of illusion. This is when the empath understands the great paradox. They didn't lose themselves in that relationship. They found themselves by contrast. By seeing what love is not, they discovered what love must be. By witnessing manipulation, they learned the sacredness of boundaries. By tasting the bitterness of falsehood, they awakened to the sweetness of authenticity. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." How? The narcissist was never fate. They were the mirror of your unconscious, the unhealed part of you that believed love required pain, that peace required permission, that empathy required erasure. And once you saw it, once you truly saw it, the spell broke. That is what awakening looks like. Not light descending from the heavens, but awareness rising from the ashes of what you used to tolerate. It's not divine intervention, it's divine realization that you were always the source, the light, the love, the mirror, the power. You no longer hate them. You no longer crave closure. You no longer need to prove who you are to those who couldn't see it. Because you've realized something deeper, you were never meant to be understood by those who feed on misunderstanding. Your silence now speaks more than any confrontation could. Your absence now echoes louder than your old explanations ever did. And your peace, your hard-earned, grounded peace, is now your loudest form of strength. Because that's the ultimate transformation of the empath. They stop being an open wound and become a conscious channel. They stop absorbing and start emanating. They stop chasing and start attracting. Their energy no longer leaks, it leads. And through that shift, they finally understand what power really means. Power is not control. Power is not dominance. Power is not loud. Power is presence. It is the quiet certainty that you do not have to chase what already belongs to your frequency. You look back now and realize that every narcissist who tried to dim you was simply a failed initiation, a test designed to teach you one sacred truth: that your light does not exist to heal those who fear their own. You were never meant to dim yourself to be loved. You were meant to blaze so brightly that those who cannot stand in truth are forced to face themselves or fade away. And so your life begins again not as survival, but as sovereignty. You start creating from the overflow rather than the emptiness. You start connecting from clarity rather than need. You start walking with a quiet kind of grace, the kind that doesn't need validation because it is validation. You become the type of energy that no longer attracts parasites, only peers. You no longer serve as supply, you serve as symbol. You are no longer the mirror for someone else's delusion. You are the mirror that shows others what alignment feels like. This is the empath's highest form: love that does not leak, kindness that does not crumble, compassion that does not cost identity, light that does not beg to be seen. Because real empathy is not weakness. It is power refined by awareness. It is the art of seeing all things clearly and still choosing peace. You now understand what Jung tried to teach, that the shadow was never your enemy. It was your teacher. That evil was never the opposite of good. It was the absence of consciousness. And that love, when stripped of illusion, is not soft, it is surgical. It cuts through pretense. It exposes truth. It awakens souls. That's why narcissists were drawn to you, because your light was the only thing strong enough to remind them of what they had forgotten. But now you see, they didn't take your power. They revealed it. They didn't steal your light. They showed you how infinite it is. They didn't destroy your empathy. They sharpened it into discernment. And so you bless the pain, not because it was right, but because it was real. And realness is the currency of evolution. You thank the darkness, not because you needed it, but because it taught you what light is worth. Then you walk forward, not looking back, not closing your heart, but carrying it wisely. No longer bleeding, no longer bending, no longer begging, just being. You are no longer the empath who shines for everyone. You are the empath who shines for no one, and in doing so, you illuminate everything. That is the ultimate revenge against the narcissist, not hatred, not indifference, but transcendence. Because while they remain trapped in cycles of hunger and illusion, you have become whole, and wholeness cannot be manipulated. You are the fire that cannot be stolen, the light that cannot be dimmed, the love that cannot be used. And as you stand now, luminous, unbreakable, aware, you finally understand the reason narcissists target empaths who shine the brightest is because even in their darkness, they recognize divinity when they see it. They just never realized that divinity cannot be owned, only witnessed. And you were never meant to be their mirror. You were meant to be their awakening.